Kapoor. The search for beauty can often be on an ugly path. From the world's greatest woman athlete, Serena Williams, to one of the world's most successful entertainers, Adele, who has recently come under the scanner for losing around 45 kgs, to new mothers like Kareena Kapoor. We've all been victim of it, and perhaps even guilty of doing it. I'm talking about making and thinking critical comments about one's body shape, one's looks, one's color, but has it gone too far? Why do we put women through this unjust beauty test, and how much beauty is enough? How do we break through these established notions and look at beauty instead of looking at the flaws? How do we look beyond body type, complexion, scars on one's face, hair type, hair length, and to see new sizes and shades of beauty? That's what we're aiming to do tonight on Meet the People. A recently conducted India's Beauty Test 2020 report reveals some unsettling statistics. Statistics about the pressures and anxieties around conforming to a narrow ideal of beauty in the run-up to an arranged marriage. An alarming 9 out of 10 single women in India feel that they are judged and rejected based on their looks during the marriage process. Furthermore, 68% claimed that rejections based on beauty during the arranged marriage process impacted their self-esteem and their confidence. Now, Dove, their Stop the Beauty Test, a film born out of conversations with women from across the country, captures some of these raw situations where women are judged during this matchmaking process for not being beautiful enough. And it goes on to emphasize the unspoken impact of these judgments on their self-esteem and their body confidence. First, let's take a look at some of these real stories enacted by real women.
ये सिर्फ हमारी नहीं, देश की करोड़ों लड़कियों की कहानी है। मैं है किस?
हाँ बुला रही हूँ। चलो भी चलो, जल्दी करो। है कि दीदी साड़ी पहनाने की बात हुई थी ना, फिर वजन दिखाई दे रहा है।
इसमें भी दिखाई दे रहा है।
हम तुसी जल्दी करो, लड़के वाले आ गए ने।
इससे उठो बेटा, जल्दी आ जा फोटो में थोड़ा साफ लग रहा था ना? बेटा, आप दोनों चाहो तो बाहर चाय पी लो।
सीढ़ी लगाकर बात करना पड़ेगा आपकी राजेश्वरी को हमारे लड़के से। अपने बाल स्ट्रेट करा लेना, भाई को नूडल्स नहीं पसंद।
कब तक चलेगी खूबसूरती की ये बदसूरत परख? आखिर कितनी खूबसूरती काफी है? डव, खामियां नहीं, खूबियां देखिए।
Joining us now is Priya Nair, Executive Director of South Asia Beauty and Personal Care of Hindustan Unilever Limited. Priya Nair, firstly, congratulations. Beautifully done, hard-hitting. It really should make every parent weep, and all of us ask ourselves of our role to play in propagating such beauty-based judgment, consciously or subconsciously. So first I want to ask you, how did you pick these 4 stories? What was the process? Was it hard? How did you narrow it down to these 4 issues?
Sarah, firstly, thank you so much. It's really great to join you and have a conversation on a topic that I think all of us will agree is truly important, all over the world, but in our country. The first thing is that this entire issue of body dissatisfaction just begins younger and younger now. And it's so worrying when you think of a young girl in her teenage years growing up who's worrying about some of these things. But it's the run-up to marriage that really, where these issues come alive. I think you shared some of the statistics. But, when you have 80% of women saying that I'm likely to get rejected in a marriage situation because I'm, not thin enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I don't have the right nose, I don't have the right eyebrows. I mean, the question really is, where does this all stop?
Yeah.
And, where and how much of beauty is enough? So really, that's where we began this entire conversation with young women. And, as we met many young women who had gone through this rejection in the process of their run-up to marriage, these 4 stories really spoke to us of 4 beautiful, confident women. And if you see them in the film, you would agree with me. They're absolutely beautiful, absolutely confident. And for them to say to us that, this affected their self-esteem, and they would like to share these stories to the world. So firstly, a big thank you to the 4 beautiful women who participated with us. But I can tell you there were many more stories, and these are the 4 that we felt must be told, so that we can inspire many more women to actually feel confident, that beauty is unique, it is not stereotypical, that, everyone, beauty should be diverse, beauty should be inclusive. And that's really what, as Dove, we want to share and empower young women to feel.
And it starts with empowering the woman herself, but we also live in a society, and so to support the campaign objective in order to herald a larger change, Dove is now taking this beyond. Is that true? From what I've read, are you partnering now with leading matrimonial platforms? Are you taking it beyond?
Absolutely, Sarah, absolutely. So, you're absolutely right. The women in the end are the ones who are facing the challenge, facing the prejudice, and therefore it's society that really needs to shift and change. Many of these ideals, these stereotypes that we've created over time. And therefore what we did is we partnered with Shaadi.com to actually remove some of these filters that they have, of tall, slim, fair, these very stereotypical definitions of beauty. We also partnered with Facebook, really because social media is something where, we really need to push the conversation and really create a no filter. And encourage people to really stop this beauty test. And that's really what we want to do as a brand.
That's amazing, because we all think, even as a journalist, I think, what can I do? I've done my story. Now that's my bit, but you have to take it further. We have to work with other institutions too. So I'm so glad to hear that Dove is doing that beyond just your ad. Like, we're not perpetuating stereotypes in our ad. We've done our bit. It doesn't stop there. That's great. But for many women in various fields, no matter their station, there is this added relentless pressure to maintain a certain look. It's a standard their male counterparts do not face. It's a standard that takes a psychological and emotional toll, where women, we find, are judged not just by their character or by their merit, but by an aesthetic. But there are a handful of companies, like we just heard from Dove and Priya Nair, and celebrities. It's a small but growing group who are working to try and change this narrative around what are acceptable standards of the female body. One of them, actor Nandita Das, joins us. Nandita, thank you so much for your time. You speak very often on these issues. Studies have shown that while both men and women are aware of the importance of appearance for social functioning, women are judged more by their looks than men in various spheres of life. Your thoughts, and have you felt this and experienced this?
I mean, it's sort of tied into the overall patriarchy that's been there for so long, where the woman's worth is almost seen as, as an object, as something that you desire, but at the same time you also, do not see that person as a complete human being. So you see them as an object. And when you objectify a woman, then how they look, it's like a little gift, it's like a little package. And then how they look becomes very important, and how they look and that perception is so narrowly defined that even the definition of beauty is so standardized. It's almost like this is the kind of hair you should have, this is the kind of nose, this is how thin you should be, so every parameter is kind of laid out, and everyone's kind of trying to fit into that parameter, because otherwise you're just not seen as being desirable. So I think it's going to take a long time, unfortunately, because it's so deeply ingrained.
Yeah.
Just this idea of the, what a woman is supposed to serve. When that changes, and of course that in itself is not just a concept, it manifests in so many small ways that it's only simultaneity of all those little things, the perceptions, the way we behave with women, the way women have also internalized patriarchy, and how we view our own selves. So it's tied into many different things. Unfortunately, there is no easy solution. And when all these things happen kind of simultaneously, when we all realize we are somewhere complicit in it, and we make those small changes in our perceptions, in our prejudice, in the way we look at women and our own selves, hopefully things will change. And they are. I mean, younger women are, I think, questioning a lot more. They're not taking things lying down. Many of the things that we probably silently negotiated with are being called out. So I think there is a change in the way that these days women are reacting to this kind of an objectification.
And the irony is, you pointed out that it's so ingrained that sometimes women ourselves don't know, we're aware that we're judged, but we're also doing it, right? The roles of mothers-in-laws, for example. How do we break out of that?
We do, because, patriarchy impacts us as well. We're not out of it. We have also deeply internalized it. We have also given ourselves that worth. If you see in social media, look at all these filters that have come up, make you look like someone else. And imagine going, sort of getting up every morning and looking at yourself in the mirror, and then posting images of yourself that actually isn't the same person that you see, and you don't like yourself. You say, oh my God, I've got wrinkles, and I've got now my hair is like this, and my nose is like this, and you want to kind of change, and that face manages to change it in a way that it can homogenize and make all of us kind of look similar, with big eyes and the high cheekbones and jaw like this, and smooth skin. And so so we have internalized it as well, but always the burden is also on the victim, if I can use the word, but in the sense of changing things.
Yeah.
But as a society, we all become a bit more aware that it's something that we all get impacted by, that the world would be a better place without all of this prejudice, then we as women who have internalized, and also men who have created sort of at some level this demand. I mean, look at the matrimonial ads. Have they really changed over the years, despite the fact that a lot more women are vocal? I mean, these days I'm trying to put a crew together for my next film, and I'm seeing so many young women who were assistants for such a long time are now becoming filmmakers. They are going to tell their story. So it's very heartening. It's not that everything is a boom.
Yeah.
There are lots of women who are, I'm sure in the media, you see a lot more women coming up, and but whether you are, as an anchor, probably you have more pressure, or maybe as an actor, if I'm going to act in a film, but even a scientist, even a, college professor, you can be doing any role, and the burden of how you look has unfortunately increased. And there is a kind of an irony, because here we are, women are becoming more woke, we're asking more questions, we're becoming more vocal, and at the same time, we are taking the burden. And I think to some extent the social media is also responsible for it. I mean, not the social media per se, because it's a neutral space, but how we are using it is also, I think, to some extent responsible, because we are putting a side of ourselves and then judging ourselves and each other on the basis of the image that we put out.
Nandita, thank you, and you've raised this very important point to take this conversation further. This new factor in the equation. Priya Nair, you heard Nandita there. The Dove campaign for real beauty is about 20 years old, right? If you consider its origins in the US, since 2004, since its inception, you've had these beautiful, some would say provocative ads, and you've been chipping away slowly at the issue of beauty inequality. But the problem is that the times are also changing, right? And you have to and the goalpost keeps changing, and you have to keep up with the times. As Nandita points out, we're now living in this whole new social media world, and actually over the past year we have all spent so much time looking at ourselves on a computer, whether it's a Zoom meeting where your eye keeps looking at yourself instead of the conversation, whether we're taking selfies, we're at home, online, all of the time. Social comparisons are happening. The younger generation has these influencers all the time that they're looking up to, and social media is designed or is used to further create division, polarity, etc. Has Dove also moved? I read something about a digital distortion campaign, but what are you doing to keep in these times, in touch with these times?
No, so Sarah, absolutely right. In the end, it's a great space to have a conversation, social media, and I don't think the challenge is social media. I think the challenge is the times in which we live. Social media is just a platform people are using to express themselves. Actually, we tied up with Facebook to create a no digital distortion filter. So that's really the challenge. The way women today distort their images to really show the side of them which is unachievable, almost like the stereotype and living to the stereotype. So Facebook and Dove sort of partnered and built this idea. Dove has a policy of no digital distortion, and that's really keeping in with that. We had this filter which we designed and really encouraging everyone to use the filter and really stop this entire very unfair and unequal beauty tests that women subject themselves to, and society is a part of that. But really, firstly, as women ourselves, taking charge and not allowing these distortions and feeling comfortable and confident in your own skin. So really the question we have to ask is, are we empowering ourselves as women to really have that confidence, and are we creating a societal context in which we allow especially young women to feel comfortable, confident in their unique selves and feel uniquely beautiful.
Well, I'm glad to have now on the show someone who says no to filters. The fourth story in that campaign brought up the issue of body shaming, which can be humiliating, it can be painful, it can have long-term consequences. It mocks and stigmatizes its victims, often tears down self-respect, as we saw with Mehak in the Dove campaign, and perpetuates a harmful idea that our unique physical appearances should be compared to airbrushed notions of perfect, right? So, as Ms. Nair says, let's say no, we should not be tolerating this anymore. Body shaming is not a new phenomenon for women. We don't need to look further than, the former US President, the Republican Donald Trump. He's on record making derogatory remarks about women and their looks. It wasn't even during the campaign. It was through much of his public life he's done this, expressed disdain for women solely based on physical appearances, and yet he went on to become the President of the United States. How is that possible? It is so ingrained now. And today teenage girls are inundated with the tsunamis of perfect body images through their social media feeds, and people comment on these images. It's sometimes disparaging, there are dismissive tones, but there are also on social media people who are calling out these body shamers and doing good work to build up body confidence. And so I am now so pleased to have on the show today Sakshi Sindwani. She is one of India's first plus-sized fashion content creators. Don't hide the curves, flaunt them is her mantra. That's what I've come away with because I follow Style Me Up with Sakshi. Let's just give you a glimpse of why I follow her.
Beauty, it's so beyond your height, your weight, your skin color. It's beyond the beauty standards, and it's definitely beyond all of these tests. Join me as I pledge with Dove to stop the beauty test. Go try out this filter, definitely share your stories, and don't forget to tag Dove.
All right, Sakshi, congratulations on everything that you've done. Welcome. You have been changing the way the fashion industry and society views women with curves. You have a different perspective on size. How did you start your journey as a YouTube blogger? How have you come here?
My God, thank you. Firstly, thank you so much for the kind words and for having me. It's truly an honor, one, to work with a company like Dove. Like, this is everything that I stood for. I also remember putting Dove in my vision board like a a bazillion years ago that I wanted to work with the company that stood for the things that I so passionately stood for. So it's truly an honor to be here and talk about these things. Finally, we're at least talking about it, and that's change in itself. But yeah, when I started my journey as a content creator, I just knew that I had to feel represented. I was always interested in fashion, even being a big girl, if I may say so myself. I was always interested in fashion, beauty, and I never, like, I would look at like magazines and I would look at movies and I would never feel represented. And that was a huge issue for me. To the point that everybody was like, in my school, I remember everybody was like, you should definitely do something in fashion. But then they were like, but you got A grade, so you might as well do science. And also, like, how could you be in fashion? Like, everybody had that second thought, how could you be in fashion because you don't look like a person in fashion? And that for me needed to change. That's why I started my journey on social media. I started on YouTube kind of creating content around curvy fashion, around curvy women. Honestly, because I was really tired. I wanted to see the change, and I just, like, something clicked in me and I said, I have to work towards the same change that I wanted to see, like, since I was a child. And yeah, I've been working. I don't congratulate me yet because there's still so much work to do. There's still so many stereotypes. There's still so many things to unlearn, and there's still so many things to learn. So it's still such a long way to go, but at least finally we're talking about it. We've started talking about body shaming, body positivity, body neutrality, body dysmorphia, things like that, you know, which has always been there. I remember my mother struggled through it. My grandmother, they've been telling me stories since, I don't know, ages about how they were body shamed. And now, you know, of course, and this body shaming doesn't end. I mean, I'm still like body shamed till this day, even though I am on social media and I talk about body positivity literally and body neutrality literally every single day of my life. I still get a lot of hate about how I am promoting obesity or I'm promoting being fat and unhealthy lifestyles, even though I honestly, as a brand and as a creator, one thing that I always promote is you have to work on your health and you have to work on your fitness, and it doesn't matter how you look. It's what is inside, and it's about time that we saw that.
Well, so basically what I like about you is that you make the clothes fit the body and not the other way around, and that's what you think this industry should work towards. But I want to ask you, look, you've graced the cover of Harper's Bazaar, you've walked the ramp for Shivan and Naresh, you are a poster child for the Indian body positive movement. I mean, basically, as you can all see, she's a confidence booster. It's like having an energy shot, a Java shot in a pill. But Sakshi, you know, the point is it's human nature to want to be liked, to be accepted, no matter what the audience or the medium. And when you're saying you are, even today, people criticize you or body shame you, how do you not get this negativity get to you? Because you can't unsee those things, those hateful things. You get up in the morning and you hear them.
I think the simplest way is to have your affirmations so strong, because I have trained myself to think in a certain way every single second of my life. It's not just something that I start my day with. I continue doing that. I continue affirming myself that I need to be comfortable in my own skin, because of the job that I have, the things that I do. I can have weak moments, but I have to remember to kind of bounce back, and that's very important. We have to kind of, there's like one funda, I think this is almost like a crash course for people who want to be confident, is that, you know what, when you radiate the level of confidence or positivity from you, within you, everybody's opinions start to dimmer down. And it's just a fact. I've seen this with myself. Every single time I was insecure in a public setting, people could maybe understand or, you know, maybe feel my energies, and they would start, you know, building on my insecurities. And I think that's where we lose. It's all about us. It's never about them. And a lot of the times, a lot of the things that maybe we're sitting in a certain way and our little bulge is out, or maybe we've had too much food, the pants are not fitting in. It's just in our heads. We keep thinking the other person is seeing it, the other person is actually noticing, but they're not noticing.
Okay. So I just want to ask, when you say you have bad days, do you share that on your...
Yes.
Okay.
100%. For me, being real is it's not just my USP, it's my lifestyle, it's the way that I live. So even if I show, a certain glamorous version of myself being in the fashion industry, I also, sometimes I wake up and I have absolutely no makeup on my face. I've just woken up with all the, messed up hair and just my real self, and I would go online and I'd make stories because I just want women to see that even if it's social media, it's real people. And ultimately, I'm here to build a community and make a real change. How can I do that if I keep showing people a filtered version of myself? And then I'm not doing justice to the content that I'm making.
Well, more power to you, Sakshi. Thank you so much for joining us in this important conversation on evolving the definition of beauty. Let's go in for a short break. There's more on the other side. Welcome back. Now, for decades, the media has pushed unrealistic images of how the female body should look. It's coming from everywhere. This includes movies, television, print. In recent years, social media has now taken body shaming to a new level. The rise of social media in the past 5 years has only exacerbated the issue. Joining us now is Dr. Professor Devraj Shom, a plastic surgeon, a facial surgeon and cosmetic surgeon, and super specialized in facial, plastic and cosmetic surgery. Dr. Shom, thank you. Thank you for your time. What have you noticed? Are younger children coming into you more? Priya Nair, I was talking to her earlier on the show, and she was more than once, she emphasized on, younger. Is that what you've seen on the ground?
Firstly, thank you for having me here, and I truly empathize with all that is going on in this country. It's fantastic to have these conversations. I call myself a male feminist, and it breaks my heart to see on a daily basis that it's not an equal world for women. It breaks my heart to see that it will probably remain an unequal world for a prolonged period of time. And it's really sad the way we have managed to objectify everything and everyone. I always say that the grass is greener on the other side. People who have white skin and Caucasian white are trying to look darker, and people who I think have the perfect skin, Asian Indians, which looks good on every other color, want to really go ahead and make it fairer. So that's one part of the story. The second part of the story is that it's not only about women. I have heard what Priya had to say. I had heard what you had to say. I'm worried about the detrimental effects of technology as a whole. The way we look at ourselves on a Zoom camera, the way we look at ourselves in the eyes of someone else who's like watching us from 6 feet away, and the way we look at ourselves on our selfie camera are actually three different faces.
Sure.
The closer you get to the face, the more it zooms up certain proportions of the face, and that's leading to body dysmorphia, face dysmorphia. We conducted a clinical trial because we wanted to see, especially during the lockdown, etc., whether being on social media and being on Zoom for prolonged periods of time was causing changes in the wiring of our brains. Now, this particular trial is titled as "Are Selfies Really Destroying Your Confidence?" And this was published in one of the top American journals. And we found that people who were taking selfies and using filters all the time actually reached a stage where they did not want to meet people in person because the pictures that they had been putting up were nothing like what they looked actually in life. And that's not about women. It's also about men. It's also about the detrimental use of technology.
Joining us is Radhika Gupta, MD and CEO of Edelweiss Mutual Fund. She set up India's first domestic hedge fund and has become India's only female head of a major asset management and is one of the youngest top executives in the Indian mutual fund industry. Thank you so much for your time, Radhika. An alarming 9 out of 10 single women in India feel they're judged, they're rejected based on their looks during the marriage process. We've been focusing on that. This is a finding based on an independent study done in the year 2020. But what about the workspace? What about the corporate world? Because we're increasingly seeing more and more women working. Is there a higher standard there for women too?
This is an interesting question, and I'm glad you brought up the issue. I don't think there's any Indian woman or even man, I mean, men tell me this ever since I've spoken to, who doesn't at some point feel insecure or judged for their looks. I think women have it sometimes a little bit harder. You know, my experience in the corporate world suggests two things. One is that a lot of the judgment that you inflict on yourself is internal, so there's already a lot of internal pressure because of the kind of things you grow up hearing from a random uncle or aunt, and then sometimes because you're a woman versus your male counterparts, you'll get the occasional comment about your look. Sometimes it's positive, but the question is, why should anyone comment on your looks? Why should that come into the equation, is my belief. And I think sometimes in today's sort of online and trolling driven world, even the slightest comment, can hit you very, very hard. And I think women unfortunately happen to be a target of it.
And Radhika Gupta, I follow you on Twitter, and there's a lot of sage advice on how to be financially independent, etc. But then there was this one tweet where you talk about a squint in the eyes, a broken neck, weight issues for years, a lot of questions as a child, some even now, how every girl is judged for her appearance. Every girl has once dreaded looking at her pictures. Me too. Why would you choose, given your profile, what you do on your Twitter feed, why did you decide to tweet this? Why did you choose to share this? What can you tell us a little bit about this experience?
I had two conversations. One is I talked about sort of the tilt in the neck, and I did it in a TED talk, and I actually kind of did it for my own self-confidence. The interesting thing though, Sarah, is when I did, until date, I have men and women, both men and women, writing to me about how the video asked them to think about their own look issues. So I've had men talk to me about deformities in their cheek. Women talk to me about baldness. People talk to me about height and all of those sort of insecurities. And the second incident, which is the tweet that you're referring to, was a really interesting one. I think there was a picture of 6 CEOs that was put in an article. And none of us look perfect, right? No one looks perfect. But because I was the woman, someone actually called out the squint in my eye. And my point was, none of the 6 of us look perfect. But why do you have to call out the squint in my eye? And in my pre-broken neck days, I would have felt bad about it. And this time I was like, I'm just going to take on the troll head on and say that, listen, I think I'm very nice looking, because I had a phase for the first 30 years of my life where I was convinced I was ugly looking and I hated looking at my pictures. And I'm well past that. I think we're all fine looking, and that's exactly what I wrote. And I got a lot of support from men and women both when I did that. So I think one of the learnings is also that you have to just take these things head on, because if you believe you're beautiful enough.
All right, thank you. All right, and in addition, I may just also want to tell our viewers that in addition to running Edelweiss, Radhika is a public speaker. She mentioned that YouTube video. It's a talk called The Girl with the Broken Neck. It's been viewed more than 100,000 times, and in that, she very aptly says, she wraps up, I remember that stayed with me. She said, celebrate your perfections, celebrate your imperfections, celebrate everything in the middle, because when it comes together, this is your story in the end. We have Ameya and Pallavi, and Ameya and Pallavi, thank you for your time. You both discuss the joys, the pain, the learning, the dark humor of being fat. I guess that's how you put it on your podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about this podcast? Why do you do what you do? How did it start?
So we talk about the joys and sorrows of being fat women in India. We both identified as fat women for a lot of our lives, and we met one magical day in 2019, and it was great to have a conversation with another woman who was comfortable in her skin. And that's why we decided that we have to have these conversations, and we have to have them in a public space where other people also hear the fact that you can have a life. I love what Sakshi said, that it is about going ahead, bringing that confidence within you, and then seeing the world change. So
has the world changed? Like, why did you decide to go public with this, as in with a podcast, and what impact has it had?
Essentially, both of us felt that when we were
much younger and we were really buying into this idea that you had no value because your body was fat. You won't get a boyfriend, you won't get a husband, you won't get a job. Countless things like this have been said to us, right? Everything we were was reduced to the size of our bodies. As we got older, because now I'm almost 40 and Pallavi is already outpaced me there, we came to realize that a lot of this doesn't really matter. And it really hurt us because if you think about what I could have done with my life if I had heard this when I was 16 years old. Instead of hearing Moti, instead of having people laugh at me because I liked a boy, or any of those countless things, instead of, if I had been encouraged to just move my body and do whatever I wanted, not laughed at because look, fat person is running, things like that. So we decided we just wanted to go back in time and talk to ourselves. We couldn't do that. So we said, we put a podcast out there, we said, these are conversations that happen in the West and they need to happen here because Indian society, it has its own problems as well because a lot of Indian women you get the beta tum bahut patle ho aur khana khao, you're so thin, eat some more food. But on the other hand you also get the, oh my god, you're so healthy, you have to lose weight. You're the other level as well, too thin and too fat. Nobody can be perfect in this world. So that's why we did it. As for impact, I mean, we get messages all the time from people who reach out to us and tell us they feel like they've seen and heard for the first time in their lives. That has so much value to us. But much like Sakshi said, we get a lot of trolls too, of course. And worse, in fact, than trolls, we get lots of men who like to leave little hearts and well, that's the polite ones on our Instagram.
Okay, we have some audience members who are wanting to get in, so I'm going to keep quiet for a second and let me just listen to some of them. I think we have Anshpreet Kaur before we come back to Ameya and Pallavi.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead, Anshpreet.
Thank you for the opportunity. So my first question is, characters like skin color, height, weight, etc. have been considered as the parameters of beauty since time immemorial, which is absolutely unjust and improper way of defining it. As a beauty product company, how does Dove define beauty and how would it promote its products according to that definition? And my second question is, to make the society disregard its stereotypes is a matter of time. If any company wishes to go against the stereotypes of beauty, how would it affect the sales of the process of promoting and redefining it?
Okay, let me get few more. Priya, you can prep for that question. Well, let me get few. We have Samyukta Thakkar. She joins us. Samyukta, go ahead.
Thanks for having me here. So I have two questions. The first one is, we have absurd beauty standards in India. People with light skin, apt height and slim bodies are considered beautiful. And if someone fails to match these standards, they don't fall in the category of beautiful. Who is beautiful and how can beauty be concised to a narrow definition set up by the societal norms? Also, beauty brands that are doing a multi-million business in India are doing it by projecting unrealistic beauty standards and hence are only successful because they show the beauty according to society criteria. How can these brands instead focus on celebrating blemishes instead of perfection?
So, Priya, would you like to answer both of these questions? And I'm fascinated too. Did you think at Dove that this would pay off in the beginning? Has it paid off? I mean, it's historically one of a great ad campaign, super successful ad campaign, but monetarily?
So, firstly, thank you so much for raising this to the young women who raised both these issues. I want to reassure you that there are enough women in this country who actively choose Dove. It is one of the largest beauty and personal care brands in the country. And if that's not an affirmation of the stand, that stereotypes alone are not what sells, because I think the question that they're both raising is, does this stuff sell? And I think I just want to reassure you that it is one of the largest beauty brands. And the reason is that, there is a positive, inclusive definition of beauty that Dove is championing, one that empowers young women and shows real women. So Dove only casts real women, has no digital distortion. And therefore, to the point of saying, what do these products offer consumers? These products offer consumers dependable products that allow them to care for themselves, nourish their skin, take care of themselves and feel empowered by beauty. Beauty doesn't have to be a source of anxiety. Beauty can be a source of positivity. Beauty can be a source of happiness. And I think it is about having that unique definition of beauty. And I think one of the young women raised it, saying that, it's really about breaking the stereotype of perfection. And I think we need more brands like this in the beauty industry. We're actually broadening the definition of beauty. Because I think feeling beautiful, feeling happy, I think it's absolutely what each of us wants to be. Whether we're a young girl, a young man, we want to be the best versions of ourselves. It's the stereotype that's a challenge, and that definition of perfection. And I think we need more brands to join the bandwagon.
Absolutely. But let me ask you, Priya, in some cases these brand purpose campaigns are successful, like Dove's campaign for Real Beauty. It's, in the top 10 brands globally from what I've understood. But there are times where brands miss the mark, right? You're trying to be woke, but you come across as insincere. Pepsi's Kendall Jenner debacle is one example of that. This is a very sensitive issue. In our country, it is getting more and more sensitive by the day. Why do you think you've not felt any shade or throwback, and that you don't come across as gimmicky? It's like a gimmicky emotional appeal from what is essentially a packaged goods giant.
No, absolutely. I think, you're absolutely right. Firstly, this is a very sensitive issue. I think, it's not something you can just do as a campaign. If it's an ad campaign, consumers will see right through it. It has to be a brand philosophy. It has to be what the brand stands for. One of the things I want to share is that Dove runs something called the Dove Self-Esteem Program. This has all over the world already reached out to 70 million young girls. And it's actually a program which we run where education created along with a trained academician is rolled out to young girls to help them actually grow in self-esteem and confidence. And in India, we will reach out to 6 million young girls. So if it was just an ad campaign, it won't work. Consumers are very sharp, very smart. It can't be a one-off idea that a brand suddenly takes charge of. I think it has to be what the brand lives for, what the brand is born for. And Dove is born for that. Dove's purpose of existence on the earth is to create that definition of inclusive, positive beauty. And I think that's the differentiator, Sarah, between brands who take it up as a one-off idea and emotional purpose, but not really what it stands for in its heart and its soul.
Well, thank you all for your individual interventions in this, for your time today, and for joining us in our attempt to make beauty a positive experience and universally accessible to every woman. Thank you all for joining us on Meet the People tonight.